Hello everyone, and welcome to Unit 14 on Implementation, Monitoring and Adaptive Management, and how it is applied in the Edward-Wakool system, which is situated within the Murray-Darling Basin. I'm recording this lecture from Myanmar on the Irrawaddy River, where environmental flows are still in its infancy, but as rapid development occurs in the country, integrated water resource management, including environmental flows, is needed to ensure that a balance is found between the different uses and users of water. The sustainability of the river and its people depend on getting it right, with the majority of the poorest people directly reliant on the water and its various ecosystem services such as inland fisheries. Today's lecture is based on the monitoring and evaluation plans that have been developed for the environmental flow program within the Edward-Wakool system as part of the Murray-Darling Basin Plan implementation, and how this information is collected and then feeds into the adaptive management cycle for evidence-based decision making. This lecture leads on from the Unit 13, where there was a case study on the Murray-Darling Basin. The Commonwealth Environmental Water Office, also known as the CHUO, are funding a long-term intervention monitoring project called the LTIM in 7 selected areas to evaluate the ecological outcomes of Commonwealth environmental water use throughout the Murray-Darling Basin. The LTIM project is being implemented over 5 years, from 2014-15 watering year to 2018-19 watering year, to deliver 5 high-level outcomes, leading on from a previous short-term state and Commonwealth intervention monitoring program. The objectives of LTIM are: number 1, to evaluate the contribution of Commonwealth environmental watering to the objectives of the Murray-Darling Basin Authority's environmental watering plan, as discussed in Unit 13. Number 2, to evaluate the ecological outcomes of Commonwealth environmental watering in each of the 7 selected areas. Number 3, to infer ecological outcomes of Commonwealth environmental watering in areas of the Murray-Darling Basin not monitored. Number 4, support the adaptive management of Commonwealth environmental water. And 5, monitor the ecological responses to Commonwealth environmental watering in each of the 7 selected areas. The Edward-Wakool system, number 2 on the map, is one of the 7 key monitoring sites within the LTIM project. And environmental water has been delivered in this system over the last 7 years for different objectives, mainly related to fish. The Edward-Wakool system forms a complex social ecological system and contains approximately 2,000 kilometres of permanent and ephemeral rivers, creeks and flood runners. The wider area, called the Riverina, supports a productive agricultural community, producing enough food to feed Australia's 25 million people every day of the year, and also supports a diverse Indigenous cultural history. Due to the development to increase food security, which it was successful in doing, it is now a heavily modified, regulated landscape, with a mixture of irrigated and dryland farms, towns and public lands such as national parks and Indigenous protected area. With abundant areas of native fauna and flora habitat, it historically had a diverse native fauna and flora community. Water is a major driver in the region, both socially and ecologically, and finding a balance in the use of water between the different uses in the region is a major challenge, as noted within the Basin Plan in Unit 13. Environmental flows have been delivered under the Basin Plan since 2010, and a long-term M&E strategy has replaced a short-term monitoring program to aid in improving the delivery of environmental water through adaptive management, and to assess how water is being used to meet the Basin Plan proposed triple bottom line outcomes. Although environmental flow delivery has been occurring in the system for over a decade, it wasn't until 2009 when state and Commonwealth water and natural resource management organisations joined forces with local community groups and private business to look at a system-wide environmental flows program, including a focus on monitoring, evaluation and adaptive management, with evidence and collaborative-based decision-making at the core of the program. This program is still being implemented today. The Edward-Wakool system is recognised as a priority area for fish diversity in the Murray-Darling Basin, including threatened and endangered fish, and it is part of the aquatic ecological community in the natural drainage system of the Lower Murray River catchment in New South Wales. Fish are also highly valued for conservation, culture, and economically in the region for recreational fishing. Fish, due to their reliance of flows and their societal importance, make them a good environmental flow indicator for the Edward-Wakool system. Therefore, outcomes for fish have been the main focus of watering actions in the Edward-Wakool system. However, many of the other indicators being monitored, such as water quality, metabolism and aquatic vegetation, will indirectly influence fish population dynamics. And thus a key goal of the M&E plan is to improve our understanding and interpretation of these interdependencies. As part of the Commonwealth Environment and Water Office Long-Term Intervention Monitoring Project, the LTIM project, a detailed monitoring and evaluation plan has been developed for the Edward-Wakool system to inform the adaptive management of environmental flows delivery. In the plan, the system has been divided into 15 hydrological zones, but only 4 are included in the monitoring and evaluation of environmental flow delivery within the Edward-Wakool. The monitoring is set up to be both event-based, depending on the environmental flow objectives for that specific watering year, e.g. fish breeding, and longer term, where fish populations are monitored at 15 sites every 3 to 5 years to assess longer term changes in fish communities. Native fish are the main focus of the M&E within the Edward-Wakool system, but as they are directly and indirectly reliant on other stream functions, these are also monitored to assess their responses to flow and to try and bring a better understanding between the linkages between the different attributes within the system and their relationships to flow. Somewhat unique to the area, black water, which is the depletion of oxygen in the water through bacterial action, often brought on by flooding, is also a major concern for the river ecology and is monitored as environmental flows can be used to mitigate black water. They can be used to provide both dilution and oxygen refuges for fish and other aquatic invertebrates. Native fish, depending on their life cycle requirements, have different flow requirements. This is not often well understood enough to deliver environmental water precisely, so a learning by doing process is enacted. In the Edward-Wakool, fish species are grouped and broken down into different functional guilds, in groups that have different flow requirements. Water is then delivered using the best available knowledge on a group's or representative's focal species flow requirements, and monitoring conducted to assess the effectiveness of the flows for that group. Adaptive management is also employed here to assess if changes in flow are needed as the event is occurring. Therefore, monitoring and adaptive management are working at different scales, both continual through a water delivery event and annually through an evaluation phase at the end of each watering year. For example, Murray cod, on the left, are a large apex predator that are mostly flow independent and will breed irrespective of flow cues, being mainly water temperature and day length dependent. However, they can benefit from flows to aid in movement of adult fish to breeding sites, dispersal of larval and juvenile stages, and through flows stimulating food production for both adults and young. Monitoring water temperature helps to inform when fish are going to breed and flow delivery should begin, and monitoring throughout helps to inform delivery. Golden perch, on your right, are a flow-dependent species and can breed when water temperatures rise above 20 degrees Celsius and an increase in flow occurs. And in the Edward-Wakool, flows are being monitored to try and maximise for the movement and breeding of golden perch through these flow pulses. In the last 7 years of environmental flow delivery in the Edward-Wakool system, targeting native fish breeding and recruitment, monitoring has helped to inform delivery of water in real time and at a yearly level, where the overall environmental flow program is reviewed against set watering objectives and adjustments made for future water delivery based off the learnings of the previous years, the objectives for the next year, and the forecast basin conditions, such as rainfall and storage capacity for the coming year. An example is for the apex predator group Murray cod. It is known that they start to spawn when the water temperatures rise above 15 degrees. When this temperature trigger is reached, environmental flows are delivered to raise the height of the river and ensure adequate coverage of their nesting spawning sites. Water levels are maintained relatively stable as to not have the fish abandoning their nesting sites due to sudden drops in water. Monitoring of larval stages every 2 weeks allows to inform how long flow delivery should occur, and as long as larval stages are being picked up, flows are maintained. When larval stages cease to be caught, flows are reduced back to normal consumptive operations and the environmental flow event ceased. The transition of larval stages to juvenile stage is monitored through sampling at Pacific sites after the environmental flow event for the remainder of the season. An assessment of those juvenile age classes reaching breeding adults and contributing to the overall system population structure, this is monitored through the system-wide monitoring conducted every 3 to 5 years in the 15 sites. For golden perch, monitoring and evaluation has found that while fish are probably not breeding directly in the system, increases in flow may be a trigger for fish to move to their spawning areas further down and up in the basin, such as the Murray and the Darling rivers. In addition, fish have tags in them that allow researchers to assess when the fish is moving and if that flow that was delivered in that year correctly matched their breeding patterns. Each year, the learning from the previous years is brought into the planning for the future years. The take-home messages from today's lecture are that monitoring and evaluation are an essential component of any adaptive management-based environmental flow program. That monitoring and evaluation has successfully informed the delivery of environmental flows in the Edward-Wakool system, enhancing the effectiveness and efficiency of environmental water delivery through adaptive management. And that learning by doing and the willingness to be adaptive are key components of successful environmental flow programs. Thank you.